Curtain Call segment with Lynne Sabean from the Capitol Center for the Arts in downtown Concord, chatting with a gentleman by the name of Charles Ross. And Charles does something which I find very, very fascinating, truly amazing. Single-handedly plays all the characters and condenses the plots of 3 Star Wars films into one performance. Lynn, it's just amazing. How does he do it?
I have absolutely no idea. I've seen a couple of his videos. They're absolutely fabulous. He condenses the plots of 3 Star Wars films into a show that's a little under an hour and a half. So if anybody's going to see the new Star Wars movie last night and wants a refresher next month and wants a refresher on how it all started, this is a great show to see. Absolutely.
It's coming up Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Capitol Center for the Arts, and Charles Ross is going to be our guest in just a few minutes here on The Pulse. And are there any tickets at all available for that?
There are some tickets available, and we also have a pair of tickets to give away at the end of this show.
So if you love Star Wars, and I know many of you do, the one-man Star Wars Trilogy, this Saturday night, 7 p.m. at the Capitol Center for the Arts, where there are just a multitude of events taking place. In fact, the new holiday flyer is out, and you have some incredible holiday shows coming up.
We sure do. We have the Mavericks coming up on Saturday, December 3rd. If anybody's interested who's on the cover of the holiday flyer that just came out, that's 2 of the performers from the Mavericks, including one with a reindeer antlers on the top of his head. On December 7th, we have Mannheim Steamroller Christmas. That's always a very popular show. On the 9th and the 10th, we have 12 Days of Christmas. This is a community event. It involves performers from Eastern Ballet Institute, the Concord Community Music School, and others. They've got aerialists twirling silk around.
Wow.
It's quite a spectacle.
I guess so.
Then on the 13th of December, we have Amal and the Night Visitors. This is an 11 a.m. show. It's part of our school series, but really, seniors, anybody who's home during the day, it's an absolutely fabulous show to see. On December 16th and 17th, which is a Friday and Saturday, we have Christmas with Rocking Horse Studio. And then on the 18th, which is a Sunday at 4 p.m., we have the Capitol Jazz Orchestra's Holiday Pops. Always a wonderful show.
Wow, what a lineup. So all at the Capitol Center for the Arts, and you better get your tickets soon, because these shows are going to, if not sell out, come pretty darn close to selling out, because you have some great acts coming up. I know the Mavericks are fantastic in anything they do, and this is going to be a Christmas-oriented show.
It sure will. And on our next episode of Curtain Call, we'll be having an interview with the guitarists from the Mavericks.
Oh, looking forward to that. But looking forward to Charles Ross as well, coming up in just a few minutes. So just keep it right where it is. And I understand that you did a little television work recently.
Oh, we had a blast. The people at Concord TV invite nonprofits to come in and do public service announcements around the holiday time. We came in and with 4 of our staff last week, and we recorded it. It's going to be showing starting just after Thanksgiving on community TV here in Concord.
Wow. So you are getting around, Lynn. I mean, on all kinds of media here. That's great. And if you're thinking about Christmas and you don't know what to give friends or family that happen to be interested in the arts and theater, a gift card is always a great idea. Then they can pick the show themselves.
It sure is. And if somebody wants to give a gift that's a little more specific, our box office is trained to help people choose just the right show for just about anybody on your list.
And that is very helpful, because sometimes you might not know what, I describe the kind of acts that your friends or family might like, but you can't put your finger on it yourself. I'm sure you'll have some great help from the staff at the Capitol Center for the Arts. And as we said, some fantastic shows coming. And Charles Ross among them. Charles will be with us in just a couple of minutes discussing his one-man Star Wars trilogy, which unfortunately I can't see, but I'm sure the place will be packed on Saturday night. And remember, we will have a pair of tickets to give away to that one. Next Tuesday, you have the Dark Star Orchestra. We talked about them last time, and that's a critically acclaimed band that continues the Grateful Dead experience, and they are back, and that is next Tuesday night.
And before that, we have Jeffrey Foucault tonight in the Spotlight Cafe.
All right. So check out Jeffrey tonight, and that's 7:30.
7:30.
All right, in the Spotlight Cafe, which is a very intimate setting, and always great to see a show at the Spotlight Cafe. And as we said, Dark Star Orchestra next Tuesday night at 7. If you're into the Grateful Dead, they are the band for you. And Dueling Pianos, which is an interactive show coming up 1 week from Saturday.
If you have company coming up for Thanksgiving weekend, or if you just kind of want to burn off all that turkey you've had, come on down to the Capitol Center.
Dueling Pianos, and then Seth Glyer, December 1st in the Spotlight Cafe as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So something for everybody. I mean, you talk about wide variety of experience in the theater. Then you have it at the Capitol Center for the Arts, and none more unusual, I guess I would have to say, than what folks are going to be treated to on Saturday night at the Capitol Center for the Arts with our guest, Charles Ross. Charles, how are you? Welcome to the Pulse. Great to have you with us.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
We are doing great. Ken and Lynne here, and I guess how do you do it? I mean, how do you do a one-man Star Wars trilogy? Play all the characters, no scenery, no sets. How do you do it, Charles?
I do it with less difficulty than you might believe. It's just one of those things that when I was a kid, I discovered that I was able to do impressions. Not all perfect impressions, but just sort of get the gist of people's sort of idiosyncrasies. So, just, as you say, me on stage, no costume, no set, no props, just sort of asking the audience to sort of meet me more than halfway with their imagination to fill in the blanks of what I'm not providing on stage. And I'm retelling the original Bad Hair trilogy in about an hour. So kind of getting rid of all the fat and leaving mostly just sort of the most memorable moments of the films. So it's sort of like being a little kid in an odd way, which is bizarre because I did actually go to university and study theater, acting. I just never thought that I would be doing this, but trying to make it as a theater actor in Canada is exceptionally difficult. It's like trying to scale the Rocky Mountains with your lips. So I thought I had to write something of my own. And this was something that when I tried, I didn't think would work, but apparently it did because it's going to be 16 years as of January that I've been touring this show. And Lucasfilm got on board with it. I have a license. I pay them a royalty to do this show. So it's a ridiculous thing to still be doing. But I think because it's something that's so very popular in its intellectual property, I can literally go anywhere in the world and do this show. It's a passport of reference.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's utterly ridiculous.
Now, we heard you auditioned before George Lucas. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, I got to tell you. So what happened with this here is I was in Australia doing a comedy festival, and they asked me to do a bit of my show for this live television, broadcast of the sort of this gala. So they asked me to make up the story of how I met George Lucas because they knew that I didn't actually meet George Lucas. So I made up one. However, for some reason, that has been something that people believed was true. So my story was that I actually went down to the Lucasfilm ranch and I met him. He was working in his garden, and then I asked him if I could do the show. That's actually not the case. When I did meet George for the first time, it was actually in a green room. I'd finished doing my show, and if you can imagine what it's like to come into a green room and see Mark Hamill, so Luke Skywalker, Carrie Fisher, so Princess Leia, George Lucas, and then Jon Stewart, all sitting there on the couch just chatting. So I tried to make myself very, very, very small and just try to, listen in to what was happening. That could only happen for so long before they eventually asked me what I was doing, and I told them what I was doing. So it was kind of an interesting sort of way to meet them. But as far as the audition for George, I don't think I would have ever had the audacity or the, even the money at the time to go down and actually, meet him at the Lucasfilm Ranch.
So now, were you doing this show before it was actually licensed by Lucasfilm?
Yes. Yeah, that was not a smart thing. Only because, you really do need to ask for permission when you're doing these things. But at the time, I was fairly much just out of university. I didn't think that this would have any sort of feet underneath. I didn't think it would actually last for more than maybe a couple times just trying it.
Wow.
But after about a year and a half of doing it, things had gotten bigger. They sort of got more real. And I was doing the show in Chicago at this little place in the Loop right next to the Chicago Theater. This place used to be called the Noble Fool. And the media was sort of giving it more attention than I'd wanted. I did an NPR radio program, and they just asked that question, what's George Lucas think of the show? And I had to tell them that I'd never asked for permission. And then I also said that I didn't think they knew about me, and if they did, they probably wouldn't care. But I didn't realize that the program that I was on was actually a national program.
Wow.
So about 2 days later, I received an email from Lucasfilm asking me, what's going on. And that was sort of our initial meeting. And they weren't actually angry at me doing what I was doing. They'd actually read good reviews, and they'd heard a bit about it. So they just asked for a copy of the script, a copy of the show on video, which I did have, and I eventually was invited to go down to this giant nerd convention, big, sort of sci-fi convention in San Diego, and did the show for the Lucasfilm folks. And they also had 4,000 other Star Wars fans there, so it was kind of nerd trial by fire. And it went very, very well because it was sort of the miracle of demographics, if you will, for a show such as this.
So you really didn't have to ask for forgiveness because they weren't that upset about it, huh?
Yeah. You would have thought I do a one-man Lord of the Rings show, and you would have thought that maybe I'd learned my lesson. Well, I didn't learn my lesson. I just did the same thing. Tried to just get ask for forgiveness or just be happily invited into the fold. It took a lot longer with Lord of the Rings. It took 5 years to get permission to do that show. Yeah. Whereas with Lucasfilm, that was sort of a giant sandbox, and I think because Lucasfilm has always embraced their fandom in a way that I don't think there's any other franchise in the world that even has that kind of a brand fan. So I guess I was kind of the perfect product for the type of people that they deal with all the time. Everyone from doctors that dress up like stormtroopers to people that dress up their dogs as Princess Leia.
Now, do you get feedback from the Lucas people about your show? And if so, do you listen to them at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all positive usually. I mean, I don't think I've had anybody get upset about it that I'm aware of. There's been times where people have hoped that I would add certain things back into the show, but when you're trying to condense, 8.5 hours of film into an hour, you cut a lot of stuff out. And I argue that the stuff that I've actually cut out is things that they don't actually forward the story. They're just fat. They're just there. So I think the only thing they ever asked me to do was remove some of the, I guess you could say, questionable material that I put in with regards to Luke and Leia and their somewhat inappropriate kissy relationship before it's revealed that Leia is his sister. So that's the only thing they asked me to remove so far.
That's it so far, right?
So far. Yeah. I'll have to let you know in the next 16 years.
There you go. And we're chatting with Charles Ross, who does a one-man Star Wars trilogy with no sets, just himself on stage. I understand a dark background, and
yeah.
And I mean, it just sounds incredible. And you've been doing it how long again?
It'll be 16 years as of January, which is this is just a comedy sketch that went totally wrong, or totally right, depending on how you look at it.
Sounds totally right to me.
It is right,
yeah.
but I actually thought that I would be working as a normal actor. No offense to myself, I don't think, but I thought I'd be doing normal things, doing normal shows. But instead, this has sort of been the bizarre niche that I've created for myself.
But obviously, there's a demand for it.
There's a demand, I guess so. I mean, all things Star Wars, it seems to never, ever end. And I don't mean just for me, but Star Wars just expands and expands. And with Disney breathing new life into all things Star Wars, it doesn't look like there's going to be any end in sight that I'm aware of.
No, not at all.
So, I mean, it's strange because I just had my first invitation to go to Japan next year, sort of 2017, in the fall, I think. And that's weird because I've gone to a lot of English-speaking countries. Like I've done 11 countries so far with the show, but none that would be considered to be non-English speaking. Whereas I think it's fair to say that while English would be probably a second language spoke there, certainly not the first. So there I'm going to be in a country trying to translate the jokes, the show. I mean, did people see the films originally in Japanese? I'm assuming they did. So it'll be interesting to see how it translates. And to that end, I'll actually be getting a friend of mine who he's ex-Navy, but he was in sort of the USO Entertainment Corps, if you can call it that. And he was born in Japan, so he is going to help me translate it for subtitles with jokes that would sort of be the equivalent in Japanese. So that'll be very odd because, I mean, presumably there'll be laughs coming at different places. And when you've been doing a show like this for as long as I have, anything new is both scary and wonderful at the same time.
And this show is so rapid fire, I couldn't really imagine that you would have a translator there on the spot, literally translating the words that you're saying. I just couldn't see that happening.
No, I've had people that have done the sort of sign language for the hearing impaired, and they get the script way in advance, and oftentimes ask me if I can come in and just do a couple run-throughs of the show with them for that very reason, because they're trying to translate it, but then also trying to do the ad libs that I might do. It's very ridiculous, and I think they're sweating as much as I am by the end of the show, which is saying a lot.
Oh, sure. Like their fingers probably bursting into flames.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Now, I understand. Go ahead, Charlie.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
No, what I was going to say was, from what I hear, your impersonation of R2-D2 is spot on.
Well,
that's what I'm told.
Nothing more than, that's really all it is. And I learned that from my cockatiel when I was a kid, because our cockatiel would sort of do a like that. So I learned how to do it without making it look like it was me, and I could do the sort of the also without making it look like it was me. And I realized I could do it in class and frustrate my teachers because they never found out who was doing it. And I made sure not to do it very often, but I would get a laugh and also, sort of have one over on the teacher. I think that at some point I had a teacher that realized that my propensity to act out was better sort of directed into something in the theater world. That was sort of my non-intentional introduction to theater.
Now, do you ever use these voices when you're dealing with, telemarketers or customer service people or something, just to kind of make the experience a little less hideous?
Oh, that would actually be a really good idea. I could actually answer it as sort of maybe Gollum from Lord of the Rings, like, it must get my credit card or something, like that. That would be easy. But no, I so far have not. In fact, when I was a kid, or not a kid rather, but when I first got out of university, my first job that wasn't acting was doing telephone interviews, political telephone interviews, and that was rather dull. Sometimes you'd be asking people to do a 45-minute sort of interview. So even when I get a telemarketer call up, even though I want them to not be calling me, I understand the plight that they're going through. So I tend to be pretty nice to them, only because I understand the pain.
And you'll be at the Capitol Center for the Arts on Saturday night. And what about your Yoda voice? What does that sound like?
My Yoda sounds like a dying goat. It does. It really does sound like a dying goat. I mean, I can do something that's about as good as the Yoda gets. In fact, this is the weird thing. When you're trying to do a show with 45 different voices, some of them are certainly better, like Princess Leia is a lot easier to do than trying to do something like Yoda. And I realized this because when I was a kid, I could always do hi, Kermit the Frog here, sort of, Kermit voice, but I could not get Miss Piggy. I couldn't do Grover. I couldn't do Yoda, but I didn't realize that they were all being voiced by Frank Oz. So I tend to be more of a Jim Henson impressionist, and other people, they can do their fantastic Yoda, and they oftentimes do it for me directly after the show, which I congratulate them on sounding way better than I am. But I just try to get over, mind over matter. It doesn't matter. My mind's past it, and I just try to keep on going with the show, because it's more like the intonation of Yoda's lines.
Right. And
if you know the films, if you know the lines, I think you can certainly tell that it's Yoda, because I'm also down on the ground, sort of gnarled over. But it just is like a kid. When I say it's like a kid doesn't worry about getting the fire engine perfect if they're trying to be a fire engine. They just do their version of it. And once people kind of figure out that that's sort of the rule of the game, people not only keep up, I think people anticipate where the show's going to go, and know that, like, for instance, if I have to be Jabba the Hutt, clearly I'm not going to be Jabba the Hutt perfectly, but what am I going to be? Because I think I've got his voice pretty well, but it's more like him being basically a big giant mouth. So if you check out my website, onemanstarwars.com, you can certainly see some clips and get an idea of what the show is all about.
Well, in the meantime, while you've been doing this show for the past 16 years, are you developing anything else?
Well, I've got a brand new show, which is One Man Batman, and another show, which is the One Man Pride and Prejudice, which is actually the one that's based on, there was a BBC miniseries that had Jennifer Ely and Colin Firth from the late 90s, early 2000s. If anybody's ever watched that was like the Oxygen Network or Lifetime or something like that, they have it on repeat at night. It's just this 6-part miniseries, but I realized that it's something that I think more women have seen than men, but I still really genuinely think it's a really high-quality show, the production. So I'm actually trying to see if I can do something that's more Earth-based and not so many sort of monsters or superheroes, and make it something that's equally ridiculous, because it's a comedy of manners and misunderstandings. So once again, just me on stage, no costume, no set, no props, no talent, just me doing that.
Well, Charles, we have a listener that has a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes. Sure.
Tracy from Goffstown. Say hello to Charles.
Hey, Charles. I love
Tracy,
I love the idea of you doing Colin Firth, Mr. Darcy, my favorite book. So, but I was going to ask you what, and I may have missed this because I had to run into the store. Which 3 films are you doing?
The original trilogy. So I call it the Bad Hair trilogy. Yeah, the ones from the 70s, the 80s, the good trilogy thus far. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right.
Yeah, those are the ones I grew up with.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character?
Oh boy. I think when I was a kid, my favorite character was probably Luke Skywalker, but that's because I was a whiny little kid too, and I definitely recognized the Luke inside me. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that one of my favorite characters is the Emperor, because he's just such a rotten person, and we need a lot more rotten people in our lives. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Tracy, thanks. Thanks for calling. Charles, you've played Concord before, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. Great theater.
Actually, it's not totally true. What happened is I got to Concord, and it was 15 minutes before the show was supposed to begin, and the power went out because you guys got a snowstorm.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was literally 15 minutes. So we had to wait for, I think, half an hour or 45 minutes, and then there was a determination that we weren't doing the show. So I basically got back into the vehicle and drove back to Logan Airport there in Boston and waited the snowstorm out. It was crazy. So this is sort of my opportunity to come back, and I'm assuming that there's no snow flying.
No
right
snow
now,
in sight for Saturday night.
This is perfect.
That's good.
So it'll be nice to come back and finally do it the right way.
Well, we are looking forward to seeing you on Saturday night at the Capitol Center for the Arts. Sounds like a very intriguing show, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time out to be with us today.
My absolute pleasure. So may the force be with you.
Thank you. Charles Ross, who will be performing a one-man Star Wars Saturday night. And if you would like to attend, courtesy of the Capitol Center for the Arts, be caller number 3 right now, because it's a trilogy, right? So caller number 3, it only makes sense, Lynn, right?
It sure does.
So give us a call. Caller number 3, 1-866-823-1077, wins a pair of tickets to the show Saturday night, 7 o'clock, at the Capitol Center for the Arts in downtown Concord. And great guest, and I'm sure it'll be a fabulous show. And anything else we should know, Lynn, before we have to wrap it up?
Well, we've got an awful lot going on. We talked about the gift cards being available. I'm asking that if you like what you're hearing on Curtain Call, come follow us on Facebook, join our mailing list. There's a lot of ways to find out what's going on at the Capitol Center.
Outstanding. And tonight, Jeffrey Foucault is going to be there, and he's an American songwriter and record producer from Whitewater, Wisconsin.
He is. He's kind of the stereotypical cowboy. The men want to be like him, and the women want to be with him.
Oh, there you go. All right. So, ladies, Jeffrey Foucault tonight. Great show for everybody, as will the show on Saturday night be. And I'm sorry that I have to miss it with Charles Ross, because that sounds like a whole lot of fun. And other great shows to come as well. And don't forget Dark Star Orchestra next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. At the Capitol Center for the Arts. And did I miss any there?
Well, there's an article in today's Union Leader. Before Dark Star Orchestra performs, there is a photographer who went around and chronicled the Grateful Dead. And she's going to be talking about some of the work that she did. So it's another reason to attend.
There you go. All right. Always something great going on at the Capitol Center for the Arts in downtown Concord. And again, don't forget those gift cards for the theater lover in your life. And you can give them a call at the Capitol Center, 225-1111, or ccanh.com. And Lynn, another great edition of Curtain Call, thanks to you.
Well, thanks to everybody that listened today, and please join us again next time on December 1st when we're going to have an interview with the Mavericks.
Outstanding. Do we have a winner, J-Dog?
Bill from Hillsboro.
All right, Bill. Congratulations. Bill will be seeing Charles Ross, the Star Wars Trilogy, one-man show, Saturday night at the Capitol Center for the Arts. Lynne Sabean, thank you so much.
A pleasure as always.